Hi, this is Peter Frampton here, and I want to wish the Vinyl Guide a very, very happy 300th episode. 300? Wow, that's great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, it's absolutely our pleasure, Mr. Frampton. And hey, everyone, this is Nate here. Welcome to episode number 300 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast where we talk vinyl records, music, nerdery, collecting, and more. And yes, this is episode number 300. Dear Lord, where does all the time go? This is the 300th time we've released a show talking about vinyl records, collecting, rare records, and more. And what an honor for us to have with us to celebrate this milestone, a man who has sold more records than just about anyone, Mr. Peter Frampton. Just his album Frampton Comes Alive, the double LP alone, has sold over 11 million copies, and it is noted as one of the greatest live albums of all time. And after reacquainting myself with it in recent weeks, it's easy to understand why. The songwriting is wonderful, the musicianship is stellar, the recording is crisp, sonically it's warm, welcoming, and gorgeous. If you have a copy of Frampton Comes Alive, and I know most of you do, if you haven't taken it out in a while, do yourself a favor, put it on the turntable this week, and enjoy the juggernaut that made Peter Frampton a household name for the past 4 decades. Now today, Peter and I talk about his history with vinyl. We discuss the early records of his career, the rare records in his discography, even chatting about his recently rediscovered guitar, once thought destroyed for 30 years, only to pop up in South America and is now safely back in his hands. If you haven't heard the story of the Phoenix guitar, I'll put a link to a YouTube video that tells its amazing story in this episode page. Now today, Peter and I also talk about his time working with George, Ringo, and even Phil Spector on the All Things Must Pass sessions, his connections with the Rolling Stones, and almost becoming a Stone in the 1970s. We talk about the albums leading up to Frampton Comes Alive, the whereabouts of the master tapes, the follow-ups, his recent work on All Blues and Frampton Forgets The Words, which is a great new instrumental album, which I suggest checking out on streaming and then grabbing a copy on vinyl. Peter also has an autobiography, Do You Feel Like I Do, which is a tremendous read and can be gotten wherever books are sold. And of course, all this and more is available over at Frampton.com. And real quick, I'd like to give a big shout out to our show sponsors for this episode number 300, specifically the teams at Groove Washer and AudiofileUSA.com. Now, Groove Washer, they make the best record cleaner on the market. They've been working with our show for over 200 episodes, and I hope another 300 more. I use the Groove Washer every day. I highly recommend it. Ask your local record store about the Groove Washer and don't let them talk you into a substitute. Also, a huge thanks to the team at AudiofileUSA.com, a fantastic used vinyl online shop. They ship around the world and have vinyl all in excellent and near mint shape. AudiofileUSA.com is a great company, great team, and the very best vinyl online. Thank you, AudiofileUSA.com and GrooveWasher.com. You guys absolutely rock. And most of all, for this episode number 300, I want to thank all of you, the listeners who regularly enjoy the Vinyl Guide program, those of you who send me nice notes, share episodes online on social media, those of you who support us on patreon.com/vinylguide. That's a huge help as well. I started this podcast about 6 years ago after my friend Dan Brown died as a bit of self-therapy, and I like to think that Dan's been cosmically helping me along on the journey. And I'm so thankful for each and every one of you for being here too. So please allow me to raise my virtual glass to you all. Happy 300th episode of the Vinyl Guide. Thank you all for taking this journey with me. I'm keen to keep going, and I hope you are too. All right, I'm not going to hold you good people up any longer. I'm going to get emotional here in a minute, so let's go ahead and cut to what we're all here for, to hear about vinyl records from the one and only Mr. Peter Frampton. Hello, hello.
Hello? Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, doing pretty well. It's a very quiet Sydney morning. Actually, you may hear the birds chirping in the back.
Oh, okay.
But I can see, is that the real Phoenix in the background there?
It is.
Oh, dear Lord.
Hold on.
Oh, my goodness.
There she is in all her glory.
Yeah, the 7.
Look at the
Oh.
headstock, though. Yeah, the Lucky 7. And you see where it was all burnt on the beginning of the neck there.
Yeah, yeah. So it really was in a fire and someone kind of pulled it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, what we think happened was that I'm going to put it back. Hold on.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
What we think happened was that it was in its case. It caught the end of the case caught fire, but inside it ran out of oxygen. So that's why it stopped around the third fret.
Oh, okay.
The most damage,
Got it. Right. Okay. So now, when you were playing in your latest tour, did you take that or did you take a replica?
It's been through a plane crash. I don't think I can do anything else bad to it. So it deserved to be played, and the people wanted to see it. And I mean, when I first introduced it in New York at the Beacon, we were halfway through. Oh no, we had like one more leg of the FCA 35 anniversary tour. And so it came back from Gibson. It had been made playable,
right,
without removing any of the dents and scrapes or anything. Obviously, all its injuries were still there. And then right before Do You Feel, the lights went all dark. My tech put the guitar on a stand right in the center of the stage. And then we don't usually stop in between, but it all went, they wondered what was going on. And then all the spotlights on a given cue just hit the guitar and the audience went berserk. It was its special moment,
So after you got it back, was it with you on the plane? Did you have an extra seat on the plane right next to you? You weren't letting that go into cargo hold anymore?
Well, it actually traveled with me next. I think on that one, we were busing it at that point, and it just slept with me in my bunk.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a phenomenal story. Now, I can see in the background you've got quite a few guitars. I've seen in the videos, your studio, you've got a lot of gear.
Yes.
Are you a bit of a collector?
Yes. Well, I'm actually, yesterday I called myself an over collector,
okay,
which was because...
That's between collector and hoarder.
Yeah,
that's
it.
Right in the middle there.
Hoarder. I could never get to hoarder because my daughter wouldn't allow it. But we talk about hoarders all the time. So anyway, now we had a flood here in Nashville, 2010, and everyone in the whole country all musicians seemed to store their gear at this one place in town here, and it was right next to the river, unfortunately. And we had this massive flood. So I lost about between 30 and 40 guitars that were not. But the thing was that the water that they were submerged in was so toxic because it was next to a battery factory. It had, oil and, you name it. It was in that water. It was just disgusting. So when I took the guitars back to Gibson, and these are ones they'd made for me, a lot of them, they said, I wouldn't fix this because it's so toxic. It's always going to be that way, So a lot of them I just, I donated them for those people that wanted toxic guitars.
So this show is about vinyl and collectors. Do you have a record collector? Do you have an opinion on the vinyl revival of the last decade or so?
Oh, yeah, I love it. Turntable's right behind you. And, well, my computer. And, yeah, no, I have still got all my albums that I had, years and years ago.
Okay.
So I have a mono, before it was released, copy of Sgt. Pepper.
The one you talked about in your book that you bought off the back of a truck.
Yes.
Ah.
Yes. When we went to the flea market, basically, Petticoat Lane. That's right. And then I went to the store later. I thought, well, I better buy one, and I buy a good copy. So I got the very first stereo one too. So I have very early copies of both, and I treasure those because. I mean, I've seen people quoting prices on that. It's pretty amazing.
It is, yeah. Not Gibson Phoenix restoration prices, but some of them get up there.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
So you've kept all your records throughout all the years. Yeah. How large is your collection?
It's not as large as you would. It's probably, a few hundred.
Okay.
It's not maybe 1,000 at the most. I don't think so. I stopped collecting records when I left England, really. Well, around 75, still buying a few records. But basically, we were onto cassettes then, guarded cassettes. I was the first guy with the first million selling cassette.
Right.
In America, anyway, yeah. So for Comes Alive.
Have you kept all the copies of projects you've been on? Are you familiar with like the collectability of some of your early work?
Not really, no. I mean, I played on, obviously, All Things Must Pass is out now this week. But I mean, some of the Johnny Halliday records I played in France, and things like that, Ringo's records. Yeah, so, I played on a lot of early stuff, obviously.
So I'll give you a little bit of information here. One of your more collectible records is The Preachers.
Oh, wow.
Hole in My Soul.
Well, yeah, if you find one, I'd love one.
Yeah, I wish I had one. Those go for about $500 these days.
You're kidding me.
No. And that's not all. Like, I've got a little bit of a list here we can go through if you want.
Okay.
But do you have any, like, what are your memories of that Preachers record?
Oh, well, I joined the band. I was the youngest, and I was still at school when I was like 14. And then I find out the drummer, Tony Chapman, was the original drummer of the Rolling Stones. In fact, he'd introduced Bill Wyman to the Stones. He'd gone to school with him at Beckenham Grammar, I think, or Penn, wherever it was. So all of a sudden, Tony Chapman, the drummer, says to me, we're going to make a record and Bill's going to produce it. I said, Bill, who's Bill? He said, Bill Wyman. I said, of the Stones? He said, yeah. I said, you're kidding me. So we get in this old, horrible, smelly, all the gear Austin van, and we go through Penge. And Bill at this time is still living in a flat apartment over a garage in Penge, opposite the high school, or the grammar school, as we call it. And so we stop at the garage, and Bill comes down and gets in the front seat. And you could have heard a pin drop, because apart from the very noisy Austin van, but I mean, we were all going, we were pointing and whispering,
Oh my God. I'm in the car with a Stone.
With a Stone is in the front seat. This was 1964. And so it's around the time of, was it Paint It Black? One of those. Anyway, so we get up to the studio, and there's, we go, I think we went to Decca Studios, and there we were all set up, and we recorded 2 tracks. We recorded Hole in My Soul, and then we recorded the B-side. I can't remember what's on that, but
Too Old in the Head.
Okay. That was probably a Bill Wyman song. Could have been, or Moon. Peter Gosling was the singer, and the main singer anyway. And so the next thing I know, after we've finished that, Bill calls up and says to Tony, the Stones have been given, the Rolling Stones have been given Ready, Steady, Go, which was the best music program on TV on a Friday night, 8 minutes past 6. I'll never forget. And why, I never know. That's England for you.
Well, you could remember it so many years later. It's great marketing.
The weekend starts here, 8 minutes past 6. And so he said, yeah, and each one of us is going to choose an act that we like. So Bill said he wanted to have us on because he'd produced it, and he was kind of managing us now. And he said, you'll come up. So it was the only Ready, Steady, Go that wasn't live. It was pre-taped because we had to get all these artists together. So Manfred Mann and all these great artists on that show. And so there I am in the afternoon, the sound check, and I'm hanging out with Ian Stewart, Stone's road manager, who's now a friend because I've got to know all these guys. and he's changing Keith's strings. And so I was just sitting there talking with him while he's changing strings for the show. And then they did, I think it was Satisfaction for the very first time.
Amazing.
I mean, it was amazing. And we saw them play it live. No one had heard it before. So anyway, so there it was. And we played live, and I would love to get hold of the video of that. But of course, I've seen portions of that show, but I'm sure they recorded over our bit.
Yeah. Well, who knows? They've unearthed a lot of early. I know Queen has got in and found a lot of their early videos or whatever they were taped on. So it could exist somewhere.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
So that Preachers was your first time on record, is that right?
It was the first time on a record that came out.
Okay.
I had played. There was a producer of Denny Mitchell and the Sound Stations, which is where Moon came from, who was in The Preacher. Mm-hmm. But their producer, I would sit in with them because I was very pushy, and I would go to their shows. I say, you really should have me sit in with you. You know, I'm like 12 like this. So they did. And every time I went, they let me sit in. So their manager saw me and said, you should do an instrumental record. We'd like the Shadows, you know. So he found a song he wanted me to do, a tune, and it was called True Blue. Mm-hmm. And I wrote the B-side, and we went down to R.G. Jones' studio down in Kent, and I recorded with them, but nothing ever came of that. But no, the Hole in My Soul is the very first thing that made it to record. Mm-hmm.
Now, you're talking about the Rolling Stones. Smash cut to years later, you were actually shortlisted to play with the Stones, to come to be part of the band. Is that right?
Well, yes. It was Bill and Charlie that put my name forwards to put me on the list. And so I never really knew whether it was true, because I was driving into Manhattan. I lived in upstate New York, well, Westchester, not upstate New York. And I had NEW on, which was the local big FM station. And of course, I hear the news, and that's on the news. I'm in the short list, you know, and I had to pull over. No cell phone. I couldn't go, hey, guess what? So I pulled over and calmed down for a second. And then I turned around and went home because I had to tell my girlfriend, you know. And so I drove home, and I didn't call Bill, but I figured it was him, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then a little later, I was recording the I'm in You record in Electric Lady in New York, and mixing Get Your Yah-Yahs Out, I think was one of their live records. He's in a big studio. I'm mixing in the little room at the back. And as I walk in this one session, there's Mick is waiting for me, and he's standing in the lobby. He goes, hey man, I just heard that Stevie Wonder's coming to play some harmonica on a track for you. Is that true? I said, yeah, he is. He said, can I come in and see? What power I had at that moment. I don't think so, Mick. No, I don't think he would want you there. So anyway, of course I said yes. And so there's me, my band, and Mick watching Stevie Wonder work out a part. I had to keep looking around the room in the studio. It was like, oh my God. And then my parents missed Stevie. They were living with me at the time. I said, you've got to come down, you know. So they came down, and there's my dad talking with Mick Jagger. You know, I mean, it was so surreal, you know. And he hadn't had favorable words about them when they first came out either. So I kind of laughed when I saw, you know, I couldn't see what they were talking about because they were out in the studio, and I was now in the control room listening to Stevie's part, you know. But I see Dad talking to, you know, with them, Oh, how ironic. That's wild, you know. And they got on like a house on fire, you know.
You know, in your book, it's so wonderful because as you're telling these stories, all these like preeminent personalities come into the stories. You know, there's Buddy Guy, and then all of a sudden you're someplace where Pete Townsend is smashing a guitar and you catch a piece of it or
Yes.
something. All these different, and you've collaborated with so many people. Are there any musicians that lived during your lifetime that you wish to have met but didn't?
Oh, well, I never met John Lennon. I would love to have met John. It was just the luck of the draw, I guess. By the time I was working with George and Ringo, I think John had already moved maybe by
Mm.
1970 to America. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But he was never in the circle, you know, that I got to meet. But I heard that he was a fan of my playing, which is very nice through a friend. So that's very nice. But obviously, there's the one person that my dad introduced me to his music when he passed was Django Reinhardt. So I would love to have met Django, but you know, he was if you could meet anyone living or past, you know, but what a genius he was. So
Oh, absolutely. So, when you were working with George and Ringo and Klaus on All Things Must Pass, that was
yes.
George's big foray into the center spotlight. Did you get a sense of confidence with George at that time?
He was very happy. He was very into it. I think he felt freedom for the first time to actually, you know, this was not a Beatles record. This was his stuff. And like Spector had said, you know, George said to me, come down, I've got a couple of ditties to play you. Well, he had like hundreds of songs. You know, it seemed like Phil Spector said, and everyone was better than the next, you know, and as they are on the record, we know that. So yeah, it was. He was very in charge. He was directing the session, but he was in a very up mood. Yes, I remember him being very happy.
Okay. Did he have the vision for the songs as he felt they should be completed, or was he taking a lot of advice and input from yourself and Klaus and everyone?
He would play us the song, either the demo or he would usually sit down with an acoustic. We'd all gather around,
Hmm.
and he would play us the song and sing it to us. We might make some notes, or we just listen to it a couple of times, and then we'd go and do our thing. I was on acoustic, so I was just playing basically the same as George. But I think he got those people. It's like when I hire people, whether it's my band, most recently on the last
Hmm.
two records, it's been my band, because they are the best people for this music right now, for what I have up in my head. And so I think it was basically just if he thought that someone should play a little less or if they should play more, that was about it. But he knew what these people were going to bring to it because he loved what they played.
And that's why they were there.
You know,
Okay.
that's why they were there. So exactly. So you
Okay.
can't get much better than Ringo and Jim Gordon on drums. You know, basically you've got Derek and the Dominoes in the room,
Mm.
plus other people, you know. So there was no, oh, that's, if we did multiple takes, it was only because altogether we weren't in the same mood on a take. It was just, it had to be that one where we were all in sync with each other. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's the second one, sometimes it's the eighth one. You never know.
Was Phil Spector on his best behavior?
Very much so. Yes.
Okay.
There was no gun on the console, as far as I remember.
He kept that in the car. So,
Yeah.
so when you were doing the albums prior to Comes Alive, Winds of Change, Camel, Something's Happening, were you satisfied with those records at the time? Did you feel anything was missing? What was your opinion of that work leading up to what became Comes Alive?
I was most happy with Wind of Change, very, very happy with that. And Frampton's Camel. The next one, Something's Happening. I was touring like crazy. I didn't have enough time to write what I thought was the best material for that record, even though Go to the Sun is on that and Something's Happening is on that. So they were on the live record. But as an album, I didn't think it was, and it didn't do as well as the other two either. But Frampton was, I think, one of the better solo records. It had Show Me the Way and Baby I Love Your Way on there. But I just loved the sound of that record. I thought it was, Chris Kimsey did a great job engineering, producing. And it was very much me at the time. And it was, you could feel that one started selling instantly when it was released, whereas the others were sort of,
Slow burns.
Yes, exactly. But Frampton took off. And then I think by the time we recorded Frampton Comes Alive, the Frampton studio record had sold about 300,000, which was, for me, the others had done like 60, 70, something like that in America.
And what were the expectations for Comes Alive? What were you thinking in the head? Success, gold, maybe? What was the...
Yes. Because we followed the same format as Humble Pie. We had, they had 4, when I was with them, we had 4 studio records. Then we did Rock in the Fillmore. And Rock On, I think Frampton is like the Rock On of Humble Pie, in as much as the audience attention was much more at that point for both Rock On and for Frampton. So we just hoped that, we knew that Rock in the Fillmore, Humble Pie's live album, was going to be a better seller. We hoped it would be gold, and it was. With Comes Alive, I had the same feeling, this could be my first gold record. Yeah. Well, it happened in the first week that they came out.
What was the moment you saw, oh my God, this got a life of its own?
Well, as it was being released in January, I think it's January 9th or 13th or somewhere around there. The fans know more than I do, but it came out, and I went on vacation for 10 days because I knew we were going to be touring this record all year. So I went away for 10 days. And when I left, we had in Detroit, which was a very big city for us. Detroit, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York were like ahead of everywhere else as far as regional breakouts, we used to call them. Can't do that now. But, and so before I went on vacation, I asked my manager and agent, how are we doing it? I know we have one on sale at Cobo Hall in Detroit, which is a big place. And so they said, oh, it's close to selling out. I said, you're kidding me. That's a big place, an arena. I said, oh my goodness. So I went away feeling very happy, that things were looking good. Well, I didn't contact anybody until I got back 10 days later. We had 3 sold out shows, not one, in Cobo Hall. So that's when I realized something's happening. And that was the first realization.
Now, I know in recent years, there's been that fire with all the master tapes.
Yes.
And I know some of the A&M property was in that fire. Do you know if Comes Alive or any of your other catalog was part of that fire?
Only copy masters. I'm very lucky. And when I remixed Comes Alive, I never gave A&M the tapes back, the multis back. So thank goodness,
Okay.
Because what we did was they were so old by that time that you needed to bake the tapes because they were degrading very quickly.
Right.
And so we baked them, put it onto digital tape, all the multis. So they are very much saved on digital tape and now on digital filing, so they'll never go away now until we have to change formats again. Or whatever.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's great. You're you're one of the lucky ones there.
I am.
Now, for I'm in You, in the book, you detail about what was happening around the I'm in You sessions. Was there any discussion or pressure for you to pull out the talk box on that album as well?
No one ever told me what to play or do or record. No. I did use the talk box on it, but it was with a synthesizer like Stevie Wonder on Putting My Heart on the Line. There's a lot of talk box on that.
Okay.
But it's not the guitar talk sound. But no, I didn't want to. It's something that should be used sparingly because it's very powerful. But if you use it too much, too much of a good thing. So
it's like a spice. Yeah.
Exactly. It's there. It comes out in the show, obviously, and because I used it on my cover version of Black Hole Sun, Soundgarden's on Fingerprints, the instrumental album, Grammy Award-winning one. Therefore, there was now 3 songs in the act: Show Me the Way, Black Hole Sun, and Do You Feel? So now there's 3, and that was the limit for me. No more, so. But I do make political statements online sometimes, and a lot of people have asked me to say, now say that through the talk box.
You know what? I realized when listening to Frampton Comes Alive recently, the talk box moments are with the UK accent. As growing up in America, I just, all right, do you feel all right? And it just, I always took it for granted. And now I'm listening, oh yeah, of course he's got the UK accent with the talk box.
Not so much now. But
no,
I try to keep my English accent. I have to speak to my brother once a week. So he goes, oh, you sound so American now. I said, well, talk to me, Clive, so I can be more English again.
So there's one interesting record in your background, Grunt Futtock. Do you recall that? Is a recording with Andrew Loog Oldham?
Oh, yes.
Grunt Futtock, Rock and Roll Christian.
Oh, gosh, I don't. I remember the thing that I did for you mean as a session player?
It may have been as a session player, yeah.
Because I know he produced a Donovan record that I played on with everyone but Eric from the Dominoes. So it was Peter and the Dominoes.
Okay.
I did that.
You're credited on this with Andy Brown, Roy Wood, and Steve Marriott.
Who else is on it?
That's it. And produced by Andrew Loog Oldham.
I'll have to say that's a gray area for me.
Okay.
I remember so much stuff from back then because every time I did something, it seemed to be, it stated a date for me. It was a stamp in my brain, but I do not remember that.
Okay. Yeah, the Humble Pies, the originals on Immediate.
Yes.
Those are very collectible. Those are $300-$400 each.
Wow.
The self-titled on A&M is about $600. Probably the most dear record in your discography for collectors is the Frampton Comes Alive, the Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab version. So
yes.
That's upwards of $1,000 sometimes.
Wow. Okay, I've got one of those.
Yeah, well, there you go. Your retirement portfolio. Did you ever get into punk rock at all? Did you?
I like the Pretenders were as punk as I got, I think. And, well, I mean, I wasn't a Sex Pistols fan. I'll say it. That wasn't my kind of music. I didn't quite get that. I understood that we got to a point where everything was so clean in recording and that someone had to knock down the wall and go back and start all over again. And that's what they did. That's what punk. The other band, The Clash. I love The Clash. So, yeah, no, I like that music. That was good. But when it was just not good musically, I found it. The Clash were good musically and simplistic, but very, very well done, And so, but no, I went to, when I finally went to England to tour there, the live album, I'm there and with all my, Comes Alive stage gear and everything, and everybody's dressed like punks, so, hello, what happened? Number 2, what is it that you do? What am I doing here? So,
do you remember the first time you heard Eddie Van Halen?
Oh, yes. on one of the very first records, Fair Warning or whatever it was back then. And I got to actually meet Eddie a couple of times and hang out. A friend of mine, Dave Thoner, was doing an album with them with the second singer. What's
Sammy Hagar?
Sammy, lovely man. And so he invited me down to the studio. And so Eddie was doing some guitar overdubs, and I walked in the control room, and they were all just real nice and excited. And then Eddie said, I gotta show you this. I gotta show you. And I have to work out what number it is, but he said, you know this number, and he did played me my own song, Nowhere's Too Far from My Baby chords, and from Frampton. And then he said, well, this is what I did it backwards, and it was a Van Halen song, a big one. I don't know which one it was, but I said, oh my goodness. And then, he was playing, and then he handed the guitar. Would you like to try it? I said, okay.
Was it the striped one? The striped guitar?
Yes, of course it was. Yes. And they say it's in the fingers. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't sound like Eddie Van Halen when I picked it up. That's for sure. That sounded like me. But it was, I was in awe at that point of him, because he was so good. And there he was saying that he had learned from me, so I never think that about myself. No, I can't be good enough for people to copy me. So, but no, I'm always surprised when people tell me how much they learned from me and these fantastic players now. So yeah, it was a great moment for me.
Peter, thank you so much for sharing these stories. And again, for joining us here on episode 300 of the Vinyl Guide. It's an absolute honor to spend some time with you. Thank you for that. I do want to remind folks, there's a fantastic book out there. Do You Feel Like I Do? Peter put that out last year. You could get it wherever books are sold. You could download it to your Kindle right away. It's a fantastic autobiography. And Peter's also got a couple of records out recently with the Peter Frampton Band, All Blues. There's a blue vinyl available at frampton.com. And the new album, Frampton Forgets the Words, is phenomenal. It is now my family's Sunday morning album. While we make pancakes, we listen to Frampton Forgets the Words. Again, Google it, grab a copy of this on vinyl. It's a wonderful record. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an absolute honor.
Oh, very well. I have to just say hello to Hank Marvin and Gary Taylor, who both live in Perth. Gary was from the Herd, the bass player in the Herd. And of course, Hank was my idol. So he's the reason why I started. So, and he's just sent me a new track of his. So Hank, I'm listening, I promise.
Wonderful. Peter, thank you so much, mate. All right, there we go. The legend himself, Mr. Peter Frampton. Thank you again, Peter, for joining us here on the 300th episode of the Vinyl Guide. Also, again, I want to remind folks, Peter's book, Do You Feel Like I Do? Grab a copy. It's a fantastic rock autobiography. Also, his new album, Frampton Forgets the Words. It is a wonderful instrumental album. I highly recommend it. All that can be had and more at frampton.com. And again, thank you so much, Peter, for coming on the show. And that is it for this episode of the Vinyl Guide, number 300. Thank you again, everyone, for listening to the show. Want to thank my wife, my kids, for allowing me the patience to be downstairs and working on this podcast at all hours of the day and night. Thank you so much. I love you all. All you listeners, all you supporters, you're all absolutely wonderful. Thanks again for lending me your ears on a regular basis. It's an absolute honor to be in your head each week. And thanks again. This is number 300, and let's keep going, shall we? We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.